Hello, I'm Miceál Sammon. I'm chairman of the Quantum Group and I'm an international construction entrepreneur.
Miceál Sammon is chairman and CEO of construction firm The Quantum Group, a premium large-scale builder of commercial and residential properties, which aims to help to meet Ireland's urgent need for responsible and sustainable property development. An international construction entrepreneur, Miha previously headed up the Salmon Group, where his firm, which began in Ireland and expanded in the Middle East, was recognised at the 2011 EOY Entrepreneur of the Year Awards.
I'm a very proud Leitrim man. I was born in Aucknasheelan on the slopes of the Slieveneering Mountain in the 60s. We had a huge family. There was 9 kids, my 2 parents, and both my sets of grandparents. And we all worked in our dad's business and our mom's business and on the small farm with our grandparents. We had an unbelievable childhood. Being part of a big family, you get to compete, obviously, and you get to be confident in yourself and your own ability. And our parents were brilliant in giving us confidence. We got a lot of praise and reward for working hard, and it became the norm in our house to work hard. So all of us today are hard workers, and we kept that ethos going right through our lives. I sometimes think when people ask, why did you do this, or why did you do that, or what drove you to do this? I actually think it goes back to our parents and the way that they nurtured responsibility in us to get us to do things. And I had the ambition to work for myself, and I didn't particularly want to work in the family business, and I was the middle child and blah, blah, blah. So I started my business in 1986. With my now wife and then girlfriend Kathy. We made a piece of joinery for somebody or a table, and then I made a few kitchens and so on and so forth. And we had £50 was the total amount of capital investment that we had. And soon realised that, the market is quite small in a small town in County Leitrim. I was so ambitious to get on in life and to do something with my life. I had relative limited education, to be honest, but I had done a trades exam and I was a qualified joiner. So I set up a joinery workshop, came to Dublin, and I spent the next 10 years building a business from just the 2 of us to about 100 people. Everything that we've ever achieved since that, we grew it from that £50. We found a little niche market, kind of by chance, to be honest, and that was doing Irish pubs in Europe. So the first Irish pub that was ever done, probably in Europe, but to some extent recognisable, was Kitty O'Shea's in Paris. And we did the job on Kitty O'Shea's in Paris, and it led on to numerous other pubs all around Europe. Did one in China, did one in what is now the Ukraine, did some in America. And basically we manufactured them in Inchicore, shipped them out and shipped the guys out, fitted them out and opened them up. It became a very lucrative business. And when I'm talking about business to people and why you would get into a business or why you would do something, I had a CFO that used to describe it as the rich vein. And if you can find the rich vein, you need to follow that vein. You need to drill into that vein and start to see how you can make a business out of it and a life out of it. From about 1990, and sometimes I correlate the World Cup of 1990 with the change in attitude of the Irish psychic changed, and the art of the possible became something new. People said, I can do that. Why couldn't I do that? So I travelled all over Europe at the time and all over the Baltics when they all came into the European Union, and you'd meet people there from Mullingar or Mohill in County Leitrim or Tipperary, and they were doing great things. We were in that zone of we can do it, and we did it. You know, the whole economy took off in the 90s, which our business kept growing, and we got into more and more hospitality sector. And by the time I'd say I was 30, I owned my own pubs, my own nightclubs, my own hotel, that type of thing. So we had multiple businesses, and we loved running the businesses. And Kathy and myself were so interested in business, so interested in learning more about how to run a business and what makes a good business work. Well, do we get it all right? Of course not. We made a billion mistakes along the way. But we got stronger and we got bigger, and we had a very decent construction company by the end of the 90s. But then there was other dilemmas. There was always a dilemma. You know, on the one hand, we could do this, and on the other hand, we could do this. So when you're faced with a dilemma, you know, you have to take what we probably didn't describe it at the time was you have to take a leadership role, and you have to say, well, what are we going to do? Everything has a cycle, and all these fads and all these great notions, they have cycles for people who are not committed for their full life to it. And probably we were never going to be committed for our full life to the hospitality sector. So we looked at what it could be, and basically we said, let's build something else that's not residential. And when you break all that down, there's very few things that are not residential, and we ended up with, you know, medical buildings and hospitals or educational buildings, and it just seemed simpler to do educational buildings. So we made an effort, and we hired some very top staff to help us to get and understand how to get building government buildings, government educational buildings. That's around 2002 maybe. And that is the moment really when we started to talk about ourselves delivering social infrastructure. The government brought out a rapids build program where they wanted to build schools. We designed schools for these rapids things, won some of the programs, and the schools became very successful. We built them in precast concrete. Their air tightness and the quality of the build was really super, and got a lot of recognition, got into a lot of journals. So all of a sudden we had a rich vein again. We got noticed in one of these journals by a company in Dubai. We partnered up with GEMS Education to build schools in Dubai, and all of a sudden we went from being a medium-sized Irish builder to being a large builder. But to build an infrastructure in the Middle East is a totally different thing, because in Ireland you have this whole subcontractor culture, right? So you hire out the piece to each specialist. Whereas in the Middle East, you hire the entire population of workers, and we had to hire those, bring them in mostly from Asia and India. You have to accommodate them, you have to buy flights for them, insurance for them. We had to buy buses to ship them from one to the other. We had 3,200 workers in the Middle East in a very short period of time, delivering over 12 sites. The building the business is a joy, right? But one of the things I had learned from the 90s when I was building pubs abroad is that if you're going to set up a business, an international business that has an international reach, then you need a different set of expertise around you. So when we were building pubs, it was all very, we'll say, unsophisticated, right? But by the time we got to building educational buildings, like we won contracts out there for over $100 million. So it becomes a very sophisticated business. You're dealing with government entities, you're dealing with international design teams, you're dealing in a different jurisdiction of municipalities than you would be here. And you're dealing in a whole different culture. If you take an Irish guy of my background in the 80s and transport him into the noughties, into dealing in what is a very foreign culture, and the Arab culture is a foreign culture to us then. It's not now, because we've become so global. The whole world has become so globalistic that we kind of all know how everyone else operates. But at that time, it wasn't in that space. So there's a great piece of advice to be taken about what you surround yourself with as you try and scale your business. You need a different set of lawyers. You need a different set of accountants. You need different staff. And even though you're already now, in our case, building our company for 15, 18, 20 years, the people that brought you that far are maybe not the people that can bring you on the next step. And sometimes as a leader and a loyal leader, it's hard to make that decision and say, I need to hire someone better than him or her to do that job. You don't want to get rid of that person, of course, because you're loyal to that person and them to you. So that step change is a big move in building your business. I had went to the Middle East in about 2006, I think. So I kind of had missed the bit of economic collapse here in our industry because we were absolutely flying over there. And although we had a fair big business here and it was also growing, and we were funneling back a lot of our resources into here as well, and a lot of our learning and a lot of our knowledge into here to increase our business here. And our business in Ireland probably grew in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. So it had been growing all the time in Ireland and abroad. And eventually there came a decision day that, like, are you going to stay? And we said we'd focus back on Ireland. The piece I missed most when I was in the Middle East was the terra firma. I missed Ireland. I missed being home. I have a beautiful vegetable garden that I grow vegetables in and fruit that I make jam out of because I love all that. And I have a love of horses. I have a love of farming. And I came home on the late flight on Thursday night. And if it was raining on Friday, I'd be out on the farm letting the rain run down my back and out with the horses and the animals because I loved it and I wanted to be here. And that was the actual deciding factor in us leaving the Middle East and leaving all of that, was to actually be closer to what we wanted to achieve ourselves out of life. I often came home from what one might describe as big meetings and ended up with my suit and shiny shoes in the vegetable garden, kneeling down, weeding potatoes or weeding carrots. Kathy would just nod her head or shake her head at me when I'd come in half mucky, but the relaxation and the release I always got from that was totally immense. At this stage, we had a very formidable company with a lot of vertical integration. So we did a lot of our own, we did our own joinery, we made our own windows, we had our own plumbing company, we had our own, obviously, building company, and we had our design teams in-house. So we were a very formidable construction company, and we did a huge amount of contracting work, so we did no speculation or anything like that. And Enda Kenny, as government back in 2014, they brought out a housing plan that they were going to build 35,000 houses over 5 years. So, and they had a social infrastructure plan then for building schools. You had to participate in a public-private partnership. And regular companies really can't do a public-private partnership because you need a massive balance sheet. From our times in the Middle East, we had been approached by a very large company called Carillion, one of the largest construction companies in Europe, and they wanted to actually buy our business in the Middle East. We asked them to partner with us for the public-private partnership jobs in Ireland, and they did. And we participated in pre-qualifications. It cost millions of euros for each of them. And we won one of them, which was School Bundles 5, which was delivering 4 large educational campuses. We had the infrastructure, and Carillion were like the parent company, so to speak. When we were going in at Palmerstown, we chatted about it and all the things, and Kathy said, what would happen if Carillion went bankrupt? And I said, Carillion are a PLC, darling. They're the 9th largest contractor in the world. They have a balance sheet of £1 billion sterling. I go, no place. I think we thought it was our ticket maybe out of, that part of construction, because they wanted to, what their modus operandi really was that they came into a country, won some projects, and then they took out that company and made it part of their group. So they just made their pile bigger, and we were going to be part of someone else's pile, if you know what I mean. So it would have suited all around. It would have suited our age profile and everything else. And then flash on 12 months, and this news breaks in Sky News. My lawyer called me at 6 o'clock in the morning and said, turn on Sky News. That's when we heard, and it was on Sky News that they had went to Checkers the day before, and Theresa May said she wasn't bailing them out. So here we are, Carillion went bankrupt with huge devastation all over the UK and the world where they were. They had 56,000 people in the Middle East and so on. So it was massive news. And we got caught up in that whirlwind of thing because we were the total related party in Ireland that was delivering this social infrastructure. What do you do in that situation? We weren't geared up for that type of crisis management, right? So of course we rallied all the troops and everyone's talking about it, and we got tremendous support from the supply chain, and we got tremendous support from everybody, but it was an unsavable, unfathomable problem. And we had great problem solvers here around the table, highly intelligent people, more intelligent than me and better problem solvers than me. However, there's some problems that are unsolvable. You're there, you feel quite isolated at that point, and dishing out all the learnings from it from me is that in them moments, you need a serious support. You need a serious family support to support you. I was lucky, I had Kathy and I had Miha. I had some great friends, tremendous friends. I had some unbelievable staff. I had some of the government institutions here who tried everything to try and support us. And in fact, other main contractors who tried to support us to make sure that we could get through it. And if you compare our issue with some of the fallout from the 2008 crash, where the devastation that caused to some of the property developers, both financially and personally, it was of that proportion. That was the same proportion that we were dealing with here. So it wasn't easy, but despite it feeling like the end of the world that day and that week and that year, if you have friends and if you have support and if you have belief in yourself, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's tough, it's mean, and it's a dirty place to be, but it's not the end of the world. You don't need to get yourself into a situation where, from a personal point of view, you suffer unnecessarily. I found it a little bit difficult dealing with it, but at the end of the day, I had to dig deep, and I had to think, what is it all about? Like, what it brought me back to Leitrim all those years before, when we didn't have anything to be too worried about losing right then. And I said, no, I've done it before, I can do it again. Look at the difference in me now to then. If I'm going to be the man that I think I am, I'm not going to let the last 2 months define me. I'm going to let the 32 years prior to that define me. I found that for a little while, I was like walking backwards into the future. So I was looking back at what I had done and what we had not done and what we could have done, when in actual fact, you need to turn around and you need to walk the other way and look the other way and start concentrating on your business. You can get caught up looking backwards. And to what end? There is no value at all in it, because what was, and what you did, and what you didn't do. So you don't have any more power over that. So your power is looking forward. My biggest support and my biggest help was my son, Miha Anthony. And he helped me to understand who I was and to get over myself and to not let myself stop me from growing. I still have loads of growing to do. I still have more education. I still have more learning to do myself to get to the place that I want to get to. He got me to realize that it wasn't about me at all, where I probably thought it was about me. And once I got across that, I was able to turn around and stop walking backwards into the future. Building a team and leadership really is really about putting a bunch of people together who can do a job collectively that they're not able to do on their own. And that was our goal in setting up Quantum. So in the Quantum group, our objective was to play into housing for all. And the housing for all is all about supporting home ownership, eradicating the homeless problems that we have, supporting first-time buyers, and address vacancy issues for existing stock that's around the country. We felt we could play in this sector because we understand it so well. And we feel that this is that rich vein that I spoke about earlier, where if you can go in and do a particular service and you have the expertise and you have the efficiencies and excellence to do it, you can thrive in that market. This is no different to me than if we were building schools in the Middle East or mosques or universities in Ireland. It's another social infrastructure project that adds value to community, it adds value to our company, and I think that our company can grow at a very sustainable level for the next decade as it tries to build out its share of the much needed homes for the people of Ireland. In the height of all of the sales and new business that we were developing in 2009-10, I was nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year, international category, in 2011. At the beginning, I didn't understand it really, to be honest with you. First of all, I never had mentioned myself to myself about being an entrepreneur. I thought I was a builder, and Pádraig Cage asked me one time, he says, "And when did you realise that you were an entrepreneur?" And I said, "When Ernst & Young rang me 3 weeks ago. That's the first thing I heard about it, So I never actually thought about the entrepreneur thing. But the Entrepreneur of the Year program was massive in what it did for me, right? And I'll tell you why. Because first of all, I was international and I didn't have that much community, we'll say, of other businesses. And I loved the other businesses. I loved talking about M&A. I loved talking about startups and angel investing and all of that. And I hadn't a forum for that or an outlet for that until I got into Entrepreneur of the Year. And the first week that we spent together in 2011, I thought I was home. I thought I had met all these other brothers and sisters, other people who had the same views, the same outlooks, the same stories, the same failures, the same successes as I had. And it felt so natural. And coincidentally, that was 2011, so over the next 7 years, I called on my alumni several times, and I was called on several times to support, to advise, to help on both sides, look for and give. And in 2018, the alumni rallied around me to an unbelievable extent in support of the position I was in. So I think that it's kind of lost on people outside, the actual power of the alumni. And whether you could be sitting here having a meeting and a text message comes in that someone sold their business for $1 billion or $1 million, the joy and appreciation by the other 400 and whatever members there's in it is equal, and everyone appreciates the achievements of the other person and encourages. So it is a phenomenal success. It's a phenomenal alumni of which I'm extraordinarily proud to be part of.